When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite, looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to this blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Warning, creators of this game do understand the subject matter may be offensive to some, but they do honor the families and people that have been affected by these real-life tragedies that these individuals have caused. Want to play a game?
Oh, yeah!
Lover of true crime?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, we got an interesting game for you to check out.
Wow.
With the mashup of influences such as horror movies, collecting cards, and RPGs.
What?
Led to giving birth to an incredible creation of this game, Killers, the card game.
You are all my children now.
This game is a collectible trading card game featuring some of the most infamous killers, with tidbits of trivia on the back of each card to help you learn some insight to each criminal.
Who the hell are you?
Let's not forget, during the game, cops will be chasing you and these criminals.
I'm a cop, you idiot!
However, check out their website listed through all social media today, which can be found under Killers, the card game.
Am I on the internet?
I want to play a game.
Hey everybody, this is Jeff Hayes from SleepawayCampMovies.com, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, according to the interweb, because we know everything was true online, November 18th, 1983, there was a debut in New York City. And then in the following May, on Memorial Day weekend, there might have been a debut of this same film in LA. And the film was this little nugget called Sleepaway Camp. So if we go by the first date of November of 83, we are 40 years in, folks. And this next guest wrote a little book based on the movie. He was also referred to almost, I would say, Godfather-like in terms of starting the website in the 2000 era, late 90s, with a man we'll get into from Australia, all the fun stuff. He helped reunite and bring Sleepaway Camp to the forefront. But the book is Sleepaway Camp, Making the Movie and Reigniting the Campfire. Author Jeff Hayes. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. So I guess we got to actually make this sound good,
Okay.
which is scary. So first and foremost, I know the story. Obviously, I read a digital copy of the book today, but also getting some physical copies mailed to me. Thank you, 1984 Publishing, the publisher house of the book. But what got you hooked for the movie?
Well, I was about 11, and being that age and where everything you see is like, it's so standout. Seeing a movie like this was just wowing. Like all the crazy stuff that happened, and it just, worked its way through my mind, and just kept me thinking and thinking. And I think that's kind of how it all started.
So, and I will go ahead and, yeah, spoiler alert, the movie's been out 40 years, give or take, like we said, but also, though that we are and have been, everybody's been celebrating the 40th anniversary, so we're going with the November date. But, and I've told Felissa this joke, so I'll say it here, never claim to be PG content. And, but, it's funny, and I've been trying for years to get her on, and I saw her last weekend, but it's all good. So I'm going to have to use you to help recruit. But the joke I always tell her is, because I know she's one of your favorite people in the world as well. But the joke I always tell her, and spoiler alert again, folks, is obviously the end of the movie where we see she's a boy and all that fun stuff. I said, I got to, and I told her this the first time we connected. I said, I got to tell you something. She goes, what's that? I said, for being a 13-year-old boy in the movie, which she was 12, 13 when they filmed all that fun stuff, I said, you make me jealous. She goes, how do I make you jealous? I said, well, you were built bigger than I am as an adult.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but I said, but that's what you get when you're Jewish and get everything half off. But and her, it's like, oh my God, that's hilarious. I gotta get up and give you a hug for, that's
There you go.
You know what I mean? That's her. Oh my God, that's the funniest thing I ever heard. So anyway, like I said, it wasn't gonna be PC tonight, folks, but I don't give a
not with this movie. It can't be. No.
No, even in this day and age with everything, I'm gonna grab a glass of whiskey. It. No. Did I say it? So all kidding aside, jokes out of the way, the book, what made you go with the book? Obviously you split this in two parts. It's the making of the movie, and you have new material that may or may not have been discussed publicly before, but on the other side of that, you talk about finding everybody, reuniting, the Anchor Bay DVD, all that stuff. So how did the book finally say, you know what, I need to do this besides the website?
I actually was contacted by Matt at 1984 Publishing, and he had said that, for the past couple of years, he had been thinking about his company putting out a book on Sleepaway Camp. And he had been familiar with the website and my story since the late 90s. So he had asked me if I would be interested in telling that story and writing that book. And I thought about it, and I was like, wow, this really might be a neat opportunity to kind of, to tell my story about, the last 25 years of everything that, had happened since the conception of the website, and, just tracking everybody down and doing reunions and screenings and just bringing everybody back together, getting another movie made. And, so, yeah, I mean, I like the idea that, this was an opportunity to, to tell the whole story of what has been going on the past 25 years, but also to give the fans a chance to get the most comprehensive look at the making of the movie that's ever been told. because I wanted to get people involved who I hadn't talked to yet, and get them in the book discussing their contributions to this magical piece of cinema.
Well, the cool thing about this project too is besides the book, there were packages as well. And I don't know if it was a limited time release or whatnot. I didn't write that down. Shame on me. But you had or you guys were able to get the music re-released as part of the project, some on vinyl and such. So what was it like getting that part incorporated as well as part of the release?
That was fun because we were able to, for the first time, put out Frankie Vinci's remake of the Angela theme. And that had been something that he had made a few years ago, but had never been released. And we were like, oh, geez, if the fans heard this, they would love it because, it's a lot like the original, but done in a more vamped up rock sort of a way. And so 1984 asked me to talk to Frankie because I'd been friends with him for a long time, and asked him if he would like to get involved in putting out a new vinyl with his songs from the movie, as well as this new version. And he was definitely interested, and so we all had a big conversation, and we all made it happen. So
it's funny that you say that, and that it seems like you are the middle ground in a lot of ways with this particular franchise, we'll say, because
the middleman, definitely.
Yeah, because obviously early on with the website and all that fun stuff, you were getting connected with Felissa and Jonathan, and these stories are more in depth with the book, folks. So I'm not going to go word for things, but then you ended up getting connected, with the director, and just I got to ask, is it true he's a lawyer now?
Yes, it is.
Ooh, thank God Tom's giving me okay for that watch along in the new year. But that's a whole nother story for another time, but which I'm definitely going to have Jeff involved. So for those, never mind, I ain't going to tell that story because I happened to meet Tom Vandell at a convention back in October. We were booth buddies next door to each other. So the other project you mentioned, the new movie I'll mention because it's sitting here, is Return to Sleepaway Camp. Man, I wanted to stream this movie the whole bit, and that's when we got into the conversation at this convention. But, it's interesting. And you probably can tell me because you have been a hardcore fan of the movie. And obviously I picked up on it later on in the past few years finally. But where do you think the fan base really started from? Because obviously you had several generations at this point. You had VHS and beta, 85-ish. You had HBO and cable, like things like that on cable, I should say, in 86, 87, 88. Then DVD, which was going to be bare bones, and why I say you were a middleman, because you were connected with Felissa and Jonathan and everything. So where do you think the fan base really grew from? Because it's definitely a cult film and franchise.
It started definitely with the VHS tape, because I've heard so many stories over the years from the fans who said that, they rented it when they were, 12, 13, 14 years old. And it was this movie that they wanted to show all their friends. And, so it was a hit movie for like birthday parties, sleepovers, things like that. And, I think the VHS and then, its cable cast, is kind of where it really started kind of picking up and starting to spread a little bit. And then eventually in the later 90s, when we put the website together, we created a place where like everybody all across the world could come and celebrate this movie all in one place and talk about it. All these people who wanted to talk about their excitement for the movie, who didn't either know somebody who had seen it before or whatever, they had this place now where they could talk to all these other people around the world who enjoyed it. And that really kind of lit a big campfire, and just everything just really kind of took off after that.
Because before, as things were growing online, there was mostly forums and such where people chatted, and you started your chat about camp movies and the Friday the 13th chat and all that. And to insert this here, because I'm a dope, Robert Hiltzik is the director I was talking about. I was tongue-tied, couldn't get it out, but definitely got to give Robert his due. Instead of just saying the director. But Robert actually went to camp at the location that the camp was at, correct? When he was a kid?
Yep.
How about that? So, the other thing when doing some research, I found it interesting was it was the special effects team from Creepshow.
Yes.
It kind of makes sense from death scenes and a certain pedigree for the effects at the time. But what was that like, learning something like that and doing your deep dives?
That was probably the most exciting part for me, because I was talking to people who had, over the last 25 years, I hadn't even yet talked to about, what they had done on the movie. And one of the people I had tracked down was the production designer, Bill Billowit. And he was huge. He was so important to designing how the effects were going to be done. And so to get everything firsthand from him, that was wonderful, because I was able to learn how some of the effects were pulled off. Stuff that, Robert over the years didn't exactly want to completely give out, because, it's all movie magic. But, between Bill and Ed Fountain, who was mechanical effects, these guys, really got into the nitty gritty with me, and we were able to, go over all this stuff. And I was able to learn how a lot of these things were finally achieved.
And that's, I would say, one of the charms with the film. And I've only seen part 2 and Return, but I'm leaving Return out because it's a more modern film in terms of technology and all that stuff. But like I said, I know everything online is true, but Robert apparently put together, and I should say Robert's wife, Michelle, was key with this as well, because she was involved with the production. But I think it was like a $335,000 budget for the film. So, and everything was practical with the effects. It wasn't everything CGI and all that fun stuff, because the technology wasn't there yet. But how much do you think, or maybe you do know from all the research, that how much budget was there for practical effects for the original film?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly how much was put aside for the effects. I mean, that wasn't a very big budget, but I know a significant portion of it was used for the effects. But, even, Ed French and the people working on all those effects weren't getting paid, what they really probably should have, because the budget was so low and you could only do so much. So, these guys were really, really creative, and were able to do things for less money and still make them look very gruesome and realistic.
Yeah, because I think of guys like my buddy Mick Strong, who I'm sure you know as well, in the horror community and such. And Mick would tell stories over a drink or two, and saying, especially with like things like Nightmare 3 and 4 and all, which were still low budget, but it was, how much money do we have to work with? Well, we'll get pennies on a dollar to get that, whatever you're trying to do, on screen, if that makes sense. So it would make sense that they did the same thing with Sleepaway Camp and the sequels. That it looks like they spent for every $10 spent, you actually spent maybe 3 or 4. You know what I mean? It looked more spent. But I want to get into briefly parts 2 and 3. And hence why I said I'm leaving Return out, because I don't know what the budgets were and all for that. But do you think they jumped the shark with parts 2 and 3 as far as the story, because it was based off Robert's idea for the first one, but you know what I mean? If I remember correctly, they eventually made the surgical change, and just the different things as far as storyline goes. So how do people look at 2 and 3 when they talk about this whole franchise?
2 and 3 are looked at as very fun movies. I think, they definitely went in a different direction, but they went in the direction of kind of what was going on at the time. Like, we're looking at 1988 when part 2 came out, and this is when Freddy Krueger is at the peak of his popularity.
Yeah.
And he's telling, he's joking about everything he does. He's kind of become less scary and more about mixing comedy elements in with the horror. And yeah, that's, I think, the idea of more of what they wanted to do with 2 and 3. But I mean, in its own way, it worked, because I think both of those movies are a heck of a lot of fun to watch. They might not have the mood that the first one does, but they're still a fun, entertaining time.
And it's funny because there were references in part 2 for sure. I actually rewatched part 2 again today. Just taking notes and going through the book and everything else like that. But there were references with like the Freddy glove and the Jason and Leatherface and all in 2, as far as they could take it, obviously. But was there any blowback from like some of the other franchises or studios going, "Hey, time out here"?
I never really heard too much about that. I mean, they did it in a parody type of way, so that's one thing I've never really heard like much complaint about or anything. Yeah, they used a Freddy glove and a hockey mask and a chainsaw, but I think people just got into the whole parody angle of it and just went with it.
So it's funny. Well, 2 and 3 are what they are. School, all that fun stuff. Obviously, I had read that you did a treatment and story for a part 2 of your own. And obviously we have Return to Sleepaway Camp here on physical medium. Thank you for doing that. And there's a story of why it's not digital. Not my story to tell. But how much of your story is in this version compared to what you wrote years ago?
Just the fact that a couple characters from the original are back in it, really. Because the treatment that I had written was before I had even found Robert Hiltzik. The rumor going around was that he had actually passed away. And so I had written a treatment that in case I tracked people down and could get people interested in doing the movie, and if Robert really wasn't around, maybe we could use this as kind of a starting point. But I always kept the search on for Robert, and luckily we did find him alive. And then you get to see that movie you just held up right there, Return to Sleepaway Camp, from the mind of Robert Hiltzik.
And this story I will tell from the book. It's funny. And like I said, I won't say word for word because we want people to actually buy the book. Buy it, folks.
Yeah, I got your money.
You connect it with Felissa. This was before email and everything else I was joking about earlier. They actually wrote letters on pen and paper, all that fun stuff. They called it snail mail, which I use still to this day, but you connect it with Felissa. And she had a journal, and she had people sign it and stuff, and there was a phone number in there. And that's how you ended up getting connected with Robert, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Before I
And it was
left
a
on my
happy
trip.
accident too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Before I left to go on my trip to New York we were going to spend the weekend together and do Felicia's first interview for Sleepaway Camp for the website. And I'd said, can you pull out anything that you might have had at the time so we can go through it and, take some videos of it so we can put it up on the website and,
And
just
cheers to the Howard Johnson, by the way.
Yeah, I love
But go
that
ahead.
Howard Johnson. It had a nice ice cream machine that you could like put $1 in and get an ice cream out for. That I'll never forget. But yeah, so when we went out there, she pulled out that journal that she had actually found at her mother's house, and we were looking through all the different notes and stuff that were written to her by the different cast members back in 1982, and one of those notes was written by Michelle Tatosian, the producer's sister, Victoria, and she was like, "Hey, here's my number," and I don't know. I think we were just like all like, "Hey, this journey's been incredible so far. Let's see what happens." And I was like, "Hey, you know what? Let me try calling the number. I mean, it can't hurt. Let's see what happens." And called the number, and it ended up leading me to Michelle and to Robert, and that whole weekend was just pretty incredible.
So the website, obviously, I mentioned John, who was a fan from Australia. He did a lot of the writing and encryption for the website, the way I understood it.
Yep.
And is John still with us? What's John up to this day?
Yeah. Around I want to say like 2001, John kind of started doing a website specifically for the sequels,
Okay.
and whereas I kept doing the site for Sleepaway 1 and the forthcoming Return to Sleepaway Camp. And but yeah, I am actually, it's crazy 25 years later, but I'm working on a project with John, something that's going to be coming out next year for all you Sleepaway Camp fans. Can't really give too much away, but yeah, me and John kind of like reconnected, and we're both still huge fans of this franchise, and we both want to keep giving the fans more of what they want. And so so John, he's still around, and the boys are back in town.
See a broad to get that booty yak 'em? Leg her down and smack 'em, yak 'em. Cole got to be. Shit.
There you go. But it's funny when I was, like I said, reading and everything, that obviously Robert went to school and studied economics and chemistry and such. What in the hell led him to be a lawyer?
Let's all go to court. Hey, you lawyer guys, you don't know me and Johnny are watching you while we're high.
It's interesting. He, for a while, I think he did want to make movies as a career, but found out that it, wasn't quite as easy as, well, not that he thought that it was easy, but it's not an easy thing to do, getting your movies funded and, getting your script.
The process of it.
Yeah, the whole thing is just, it's wild. And, so him and Michelle started a family, and Robert was like, you know what, I got to pay the bills. And so he went and finished up in law school and got
a real job, damn it.
yeah. Well, that's the way it had to go.
Yeah, no, that's, it's funny.
Some people are lucky in that, they grow up with parents who are in the industry or whatever, and it kind of, they just go into it because of that, and they're always able to do that as their career. But, Robert's family wasn't in movie making. It's just something he wanted to do, and, real life got in the way.
Yeah. So, and it's a shame because I'm just guessing here, but Mike Kellen, who played Mel, the owner of the first camp and such, do you think he would have liked this whole revolution of between the conventions and the love that a lot of these folks get, whether it be from Sleepaway Camp or other franchises, because the con circuit it's become such a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know enough about his personality to be able to really answer that, but he was involved in a lot of like horror type stuff. He did Twilight Zone type shows and things like that. So, I would guess to say that he probably, would have gone to some conventions and definitely would have liked to have meet a lot of the fans. And when he saw all the enthusiasm that the fans bring, how could you not, how can you not love that?
So, but the one I'm actually looking forward to, and I've been talking to her the past few days about doing something, is Catherine, who played Meg, who was probably my favorite character in the movie. Because I am a heel at heart, as people would know. But Catherine actually wasn't originally booked to play that role. Am I right with that, or what happened there?
No, Catherine was. The one who was not originally going to play the role was Karen, who played Judy.
Karen Fields, correct?
Yes.
Now, I've heard different philosophies and opinions of this, but was there ever concrete reasoning on why the original person who was cast, who's done well on her own, didn't take the role? Because the majority one I've heard is about the whole with the curling iron. So, what do you know to be fact and separating the fact and fiction and stuff?
Actually, I think it was Felissa who originally told me that she remembered at the time that she had heard that Jane Krakowski, who was originally set to play Judy, decided against doing it because of the whole, graphic nature of the curling iron incident. And then so Robert went back and thought about the audition that he had seen from Karen, who I guess he thought had maybe done a better job anyway. But the reason he didn't originally hire Karen to play the role was because he wanted a blonde, because he wanted a visual contrast between Angela and Judy. So he didn't want another brunette. But thinking about, how well he felt that she, portrayed the character, he went back, and after Jane decided against it, then he went and said, all right, let's bring Karen in.
Okay. So obviously there's documentaries and all kinds of stuff out there. Well, why I'm saying that, apparently there was a documentary being in production. Do you know the documentary I'm referencing?
I think so. If I remember right, that's something that I think they originally tried to get off the ground like 5 or 6 years ago.
Something like that initially. And there's footage that's been done and stuff. Do you know anything on that? I was going to see if you knew the status of it.
No, actually, I was never involved in it at all, so I don't really know anything about it. I know Felissa was involved as a producer at one point. That's about all I can tell you. So, some people have asked me over the years, what's going on? How come this hasn't come out? And I'm like, I'm not the right person to ask about this because I don't know anything about it. Yeah. But yeah, I guess a lot of people, I guess they did a crowdfunding type of thing, and fans put in money to be part of it. And then, they're, I guess, worked up because right now there's nothing to show for it. And, but again, I tell them when they ask me about it, I'm not the person to ask. You to talk to the producers about this.
Because there's a couple other people that I know that were involved with, but I just don't want to drop other names because I don't know if they were involved with this project. Because I know there was a group there that have done other documentaries and stuff. And I don't know if it's the same full group or not. With this Sleepaway Camp and the website and just everything that you've been a part of the past 25 years, even longer as a fan and stuff, what do you say? And I know this might be a little biased because of, like me, relationships you built and all with this franchise. But what is your favorite character in the series, but also what would you say is your favorite film of the franchise at this point?
Wow, that's kind of hard.
I know, I know. Like I said, it's a mixture of personal and professional, and
yeah, yeah. There is a lot. I mean, I like so many of the characters because, in all of them, the characterizations are just, every single character has this strong characterization, and you either like them or you hate them, and you want to see them get killed or you want to see them make it to the end. I love one of the characters that I love to see the progression of was Ronnie, because he started out as the head counselor, and he was this guy who wasn't he wasn't really known for the acting part, I guess, so much of the movie as he was for his muscles. And when he came back and returned to Sleepaway Camp, he got to play Ronnie as like this freaked out, paranoid Ronnie. And it was just something I don't think anybody ever could have ever imagined. Like, this character from the first movie is now playing this paranoid, freaked out guy. And he really impressed me with the job he did. And, so he's definitely one of those fun characters. I mean, I love them all. So it's hard to really.
And I'll say this with that reference of Ronnie and stuff, and Paul's interesting guy, nice guy, the whole bit. But it's funny. If we look at the characters just based off the character and the storyline stuff, it's not like you can fault Ronnie to be paranoid and everything else based on what happened in the first film. So,
oh, definitely. I mean, the story of the first movie just worked its way into his brain, and he's still working in the camp industry, and it was all bound to crack sooner or later.
Exactly. So let me ask you this, because I've heard this story been told, obviously, as we get ready to wrap, is that Robert, I should say, wants to give a kickstart to the franchise again and do like a modern version. Will that work? I don't know if you exchanged ideas and all that stuff, because I'm sure you've built up enough in a relationship you can kick around ideas. I know you shared yours with him and from the treatment I mentioned earlier. But can that work today? Because when I think about it, how many in 2023, get ready to go into 2024, how many people are kids-wise are going to camp and everything else where that was more common in the late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah, no, definitely. The story isn't exactly the same. I mean, there's definite parallels to it. And a lot of the characters are the same, and some of the events are the same, but it's made for today. It's made for today's world, and the issues we're having in today's world have been weaved into the story. And I definitely think it works because, yes, I think that during the 70s and 80s, going to camp was probably more popular for teenagers at that point. But I mean, it's still happening now. It's just, done in a little bit of a different way. And I think that story goes into this reboot story. And, it's still a movie that you'll be thinking about because there's so much subtext going on all over the place. And you got these characters that, each character is so strongly defined, and, all the things you love about Sleepaway Camp, they're all there. But again, it's written for a 2024 world instead of 1982.
And you just brought up a good point and actually reminded me for final question is, obviously the world has changed in terms of it's more discussed now, the LGBTQ plus community and transgender and just a lot of those different topics are more discussed. Sometimes polarizing, whatever. I don't give a shit. But it's more of a discussed topic now. So how do you think does that make this project more discussed? Where maybe back in that time period in 82, 83, when the movie was made, it wasn't like we weren't as open as a society, no matter where you stand on the topics. How does that work then compared to now? If that makes sense where I'm trying to go with that, I can't seem to articulate it.
Yeah, no, actually, in both eras, I think it's difficult because you're dealing with topics that sometimes are difficult to deal with, especially in terms of a movie and telling a story. So I think there were things that were difficult back then about dealing with homosexual characters, and especially when you're dealing with kids. Nobody wanted to touch that back then, but Sleepaway Camp did. And so now we're dealing with other issues and still some of the same stuff, but some other stuff. And I think there's still some tough decisions that are going to need to be made when you make a movie that deals with all sorts of,
these topics,
sexuality issues and gender issues, and just there's so much to it.
And the reason I don't think I could articulate it, folks, and I want to make this clear because I'm going to get hate no matter what. Whatever. You, I don't give a shit. But I am learning more and more about the topics. So I'm not judging one way or the other. I have friends in the community, that are educating me, and if I have a question about something within the field, they tell me. So I'm learning like everybody else. Okay. But I was just curious to know how it would work with the film from back then and all. And I think you answered it quite well. But if folks want to get the book, it's 1984 publishing, but I'll have links to it through Amazon, all that fun stuff. But if people want to visit the website, because I know you still update that as well, where can they go for that?
That's sleepawaycampmovies.com.
Mr. Jeff Hayes, thank you so much for the time.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Hey there, Friday fans. We know how much you enjoy the movies. Enjoy grabbing your Friday merchandise and interacting with the Friday family, whether it be at conventions or during our particular watch-alongs. Well, when you're looking to get yourself masks, why not check out our friends over at Camp Blood Customs out of New York State and order your specific custom mask from any of the films. All orders are made specifically. Your needs and wants are. Make sure you find Camp Blood Customs on Facebook, Instagram, and all over social media and order yours today.
And you're listening to Crazy Train Radio. Don't take a nap.